Hello and welcome to season 3 of Financial Secrets Revealed. My name is Amanda Cassar, and for season 3, we are going to be meeting the experts. We will be talking to people who arrange socially conscious investments. We will be interviewing a former Olympic swimmer who is now the head of a large Australian bond company. We talk to a financial advisor to see how advisors can actually add value. We also discuss ETFs, contrarian investing. So I hope you enjoyed doing this deep dive with me into meeting the experts and learning a lot more about investing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to season 3 of Financial Secrets Revealed, where we will be meeting the experts when it comes to money. And today I am joined by the lovely Aasha T, LaCount, all the way from the States. Aasha, welcome.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I lived in Australia, so I like being back down under.
Yeah, and Bali and America. You've been everywhere, man.
Sure have. I'm a mermaid. I like to float around the place, can't stay too long.
Beautiful, beautiful. What a few great places to explore. It's very eat, pray, love of you, isn't it? You just got
It
to
certainly
throw
is.
in India and a bit of
Exactly.
Italy.
I like that.
Oh, good. Asha, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and why we are meeting you as one of the experts on money today?
Oh man, I'm so excited to be here, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. And hello to all of the guests that are watching and listening today. My name is Aasha T. I am the founder and CEO of Beyond EQ International. I do high performance coaching, consulting, and recruitment. And I'm also the founder of Aasha T International, where I work with women in feminine embodiment for purpose and money, because your energy, whether you're a man or a woman, directly affects how you hold money in your being, because it is directly affected to your worth.
Fantastic. So this is obviously going to sound very woo-woo to some people, and where they might be sitting there going, yeah, this one's not for me. I'm not sure this is meeting the experts. But how do you find that our personal beliefs and energy around money impact on our ability to deal, keep, or spend money? How do you find that manifests when you've met with people in your life?
Yeah. So, well, first off, for those who do feel like it may be in the woo-woo bracket and not an expert, so to say, I am in the second year of my business, and I have taken $500,000 with no team, on my own, with no paid advertisements. So I'm a little literal embodiment of this. What I find is there is an anxiety that gets attached to money in a lot of relationships, where women in particular may feel stressed about money. And if you are a business owner, you know that it is a journey to self, regardless of what your belief system is. Energy is everything, but what people don't really understand around that is that it is your attachments to your story, it is your emotions, your energy, emotion. Now, money has no monetary value. It only holds the emotional weight that we put on it. And we base the value off that as humans. And therefore, when your bank account gets low, you may feel afraid. You may feel threatened. You may feel scared. What I teach is for people to feel completely calm, regardless of what's going on externally.
Interesting stuff. So I've heard before money, it's energy and motion, all that sort of stuff that goes on. I have a special interest in financial abuse and find our personal beliefs that we hold can also be impacted. And money is a very, very easy way for a partner to control somebody else, isn't it? So when it comes to our belief system about money, obviously that's things we've seen and grown up with, our environment, our parents' messages, whether they were unspoken or spoken. So it could be things, I suppose, like it takes money to make money, or the rich get richer. So those sort of things that are said as we're younger, how do they, I suppose, fall in us and impact us and our belief system as we grow up?
Oh, such a great question, Amanda. And, this is, interestingly, Donald Trump was quoted saying someone had asked him, how do rich get rich? And he said, you're born with it. It's in your DNA. And that is 100% true. For those who are scientifically backed and like data, I study epigenetics and the understanding of the double helix and our DNA system. And you receive one code from your mother and one code from your father. So if your mother went through the Irish famine and dealt with the repercussions of the Great Depression, that is a trauma that will carry generation on generation until someone decides to stop it. So in my case, my father's family, such an anxiety around money. My grandmother would get so stressed about money, and then my father is the same. Everything sort of has a dollar value to it. And we're broke, we're broke, we're broke. You know, when you hear the same thing over and over and over, generation on generation, you're going to start to believe it. It becomes what we call a limiting belief or a story. I have dubbed the word scarcity codes. The coding in your body says, I can't hold money. That's why when a lottery winner who's never had money before wins, within months sometimes they're back to what we call the money thermometer. They can only hold so much in their body. And therefore, it makes it more challenging if you have a lot of these stories to actually hold money. You can see your money go, even if you're making 6-7 figures, the money you hold is kind of going up and going down. And I find that over and over again with some of my executive clients as well.
And I suppose in our very recent past, I suppose our modern history, in the last 100 years, you know, we've come out of two massive world wars, a Great Depression. I mean, my parents are baby boomers. They grew up post-war. So their parents were very much scarcity mindset. They were, you know, my grandfather served in the British Indian Army. They came back to rationing, emigrated out to Australia, you know, for a better life. So for my parents' generation, who are sort of now in their 60s, 70s, 80s, that they've grown up with, you know, reuse, recycle. We don't throw anything away. We make the most of it. Our clothing has to last forever. We repair our socks, or, you know, we darned the stockings, you know, which to my children, you know, if you get a hole in your sock, you throw it away, you buy another one because it's a couple of bucks. Like there's this complete shift in, you know, holding on to everything, which I know that hoarding mentality for some, because they were so poor and so starving, becomes almost a mental illness. Whereas today, everything seems to be a throwaway society. So we have these two massively different mindsets and mind shifts in people. How do we navigate? Because obviously the pendulum can swing too far in either direction. So how do we come up with, yes, it's lovely to have that reduce, reuse, recycle, but also, you know, we are in a throwaway world where things are cheap and easy to replace. So how do we find that balance between both of those extremes? What's a normal for people to look at?
Yeah, that is a great question. And you brought up so many good points. I love what you said about the pendulum swinging. As a matter of fact, that's really in any case, right? Like maybe you grew up in a really religious family and then you all of a sudden become all the way over here to an atheist. Or you dated someone who had narcissistic personality and then you just don't date ever again. And all
We're such people creatures.
yeah, this is
All or nothing.
yeah, it's like all or nothing. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm done. And so these are actual trauma responses. And what we do is we feel like that's relationship in that case. And it doesn't have to do with our finances and our success. And actually, they're very embedded with one another because it's all emotional intelligence. It's all energy. So emotional intelligence is the balance of the right hemisphere of your brain, which is your emotions, and the left, which is your analytical. I went to school for accounting and I worked in accounts for one of the largest building businesses in Australia. And I worked as a bookkeeper for many years, a remote bookkeeper as well. And I love numbers and I love quantifying. So when you actually talk about balance, it's the whole point of life. It's about giving honor to your inward journey, whatever that looks like for you. Some people like to hike, swim, whatever. I do energy work, and I really firmly believe it is the fastest way to get to where you desire to go. And then you also take external action. So when you're talking about what you just described there, Amanda, it really is about gently honoring both of it. And it's almost like the light in the dark and the up and the down and the in and the out. And, we've been programmed to really just think that we take more action, more action, more action. When the reality is that you want to kind of sit in and get your emotions create 90% of the stories we tell and the decisions we make. So that's why emotional intelligence is the answer to your question. It balances you. Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. So if we're sitting with a whole bunch of stories and we've never sort of gone inward and had those woo-woo moments, because that's just not who we are and what we do, how do we sit there and go, right, I need to figure out my relationship with money. What do I really believe? How
Yes.
do we
Such a good question.
start or go down that path in that journey to understand, I guess, those, whether it's a trauma or a belief system that's holding us back, where it's, I'll never make $1 million in my life, or,
Oh, yeah.
I could never earn over $100,000. I just wouldn't know what to do with it. Or where we impose those beliefs, how do we start unpacking that for ourselves?
Great question. Great question. So, the first thing that you can look at, so I do want to start by saying women have a more difficult time with this than men, women entrepreneurs in particular. When you look at startups, the majority of startups that are what we call unicorns that make huge money very quickly are men, because men don't have as many emotional attachments. Women are love, we're boundless, right? So we have a lot of stories. We have a little bit of a more difficult time letting go. And the one thing that is the common link, according to SOEP studies, is 90% of self made millionaires have one thing in common, and it's emotional regulation, when they regulate their emotions. So, in order to get there, if you're telling yourself stories and you're feeling like, oh my God, I'm really resonating here, there's a lot of stuff like my wife is siphoning my bank account and I can't figure out what to do, or et cetera, et cetera. You want to look at your own self-worth, your own self-worth. So you can think about, there's a little exercise that your audience can try. You write down maybe 5 or 10 times in your whole life where you didn't feel worthy, like maybe someone broke your heart or you had a really rough childhood. You don't have to go back there for a long time, but you want to write these 10 things down. And then you want to focus on one thing at a time. And you just want to send like warmth and love to that version of you. You don't have to forgive the other people. You just need to like kind of love that version of you. And then you'd write a letter to that version of you, and then you want to burn the letter. And you can really, my father does this. It's amazing because my father's like a businessman and like, he's like,
The
I
least
love
woo-woo person you're going to meet.
yeah. And he's like, oh my God, Asha, I love like all the burning of the letters because you can actually feel it. I've had very interesting things happen where people reach out after years, people lose weight because it's a protective mechanism. We're a little bit afraid from that moment when we didn't feel worthy of receiving. And so that's a great place for people to start, is their own self-worth, what they really believe. So in order to get there, you need to touch down on the things in the past that made you feel like you weren't worthy and forgive yourself in that moment. And just hold yourself and love yourself in that moment.
And when people come together who've had very, very different backgrounds and stories, so, like I said, my parents were very much reduce, reuse, recycle, compost, fix everything, hold on to things. And, you might come across, my partner's family were very different. They were much wealthier. They moved out from Egypt and migrated to Australia and had great jobs. And so we got married when we were 20. No idea how to even discuss our emotions, let alone money. So how do people
Yeah.
then talk about, well, what do you believe about money? And I don't know, what do you believe? Because we often find that the hoarder and the spender come together and it creates so many problems. So what are some good ways to start those conversations in relationships about what do you believe and how do we do this respectfully, so that you can have a beautiful relationship instead of like, well, I've got secret accounts because I know you're going to spend it, and, all this tension around money. So how can we unpack some of that as well? I mean, we've got our own shit, but
No, it's so true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the first step, right? Is like you got to really deal with your own stories. But the reality is when you're married and when you're in these relationships, you have to come together. You're creating together. The one thing that I find that has been so helpful for me, I'm divorced. My first marriage, I had a radical spending habit. You know, my husband and I just could not seem to get it together, and it was very much a trauma bond. That's what brought me into the work that I'm in now. Is realizing that it is the trauma bond. You can have a trauma bond with money. You can, if you want it so much, you're actually pushing it away. Believe it or not, that's how energy works. If you're very cool about it and just kind of let it flow through you, it's going to flow through. You know, Aussies are good at that. But if we're talking about relationships and money, when it comes to that, the first thing that you want to remember is that you're on the same team. It's so simple, but really it's you against the world. When we start fighting about money and spending habits, we're not coming to contractual resolutions. When you're in a marriage, okay, I mean, it's loving and it's beautiful and it's all these wonderful things, but you've agreed to a contract, and it's like you've got your roles and he's got his roles. And really, for me, what helped us toward the kind of like middle of our marriage when we were entrepreneurs was coming up with who did what in the relationship. And to be honest with you, I actually, by the end, I sort of self-proclaimed myself on an allowance. I was like, I think I need an allowance or something to, like, I can't be managing the money. I'm not great at it. And so it's really taking that ownership on what your role is and looking at yourself and saying, I'm not great with money. I spend it all the time. And I'll be honest, there is an element of leadership. Someone needs to lead it. In my preference is that the masculine really leads the family dynamic. That's a preference that I have in my belief system and how I live my life, and kind of helps to determine where everybody should be with the money. So yeah, so that's it. But I owned that toward the end. I was like, oh, I'm not great with my spending. Since then, everything has changed since I opened my business 2 years ago. So yeah.
So how does someone who comes to that realization, look, actually, I'm not great with money, whether I've been told that 1,000 times or have come to believe it or whatever, how do you then go, right, I want to change this habit? I know you've talked about energy. You know, we're not taught financial literacy at school. And if our parents are clueless, they've only taught us what their clueless parents in the most beautiful way, like they muddled through and did their best. But if we've had no formal education, we couldn't put a budget together if we tried, how can we then take that next step after we've gone, right, something's got to change? What do you think's next? How do we move on and turn it around?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I am a huge fan of Excel and Google Sheets, and I use those for everything. The first,
I cannot use Excel to save myself.
I have like projections. So if you're a business owner, if you don't have projections, you need to create that because again, it comes down to a contract. So when you're writing it down and you're saying, this is what I want to change, and this is the amount of money I desire to have in my bank account by next year, help me get there. And then you start taking the aligned action. I'll be honest with you. Especially if you're a woman, emotional and energetic intelligence is going to get you to the fastest results. I see it over and over again with my thousands of clients. They're entrepreneurs, sometimes coaches, and they're able to take and hold $30,000 to $50,000 a month, which is where I'm at in my business. And so, when you ask that question, it's just about really making the declaration that you want to change. Even just that, even just energetically saying, I'm making a change and I'm freaking going for it. And I'm done and I'm tired of the scarcity and I'm done and I want to make a change. That right there is such a great way to start. But you got to look for the signs and take action. And everybody tends to kind of go out and take action outward, and the structure is amazing, but you have to be able to hold that inside, and that comes down to your worth.
And look, thankfully for those of us like me who are Excel challenged, there's so many great tools on the internet now. I know the Australian government has a website called Money Smart where you can look up anything, and there's a fabulous Excel-based budget sheet that you can use to start. I know a lot of the bank apps now have budgeting tools where, you know, it's pulling the information in real time from the app. So there's plenty of things out there now that, you know, we can take advantage of if we're not going to be the greatest and stay on track with our Excel spreadsheets.
And may I say something,
Yep,
Amanda, on that? You just reminded me, you have to love money. Okay, so money, as I mentioned, it is an energy. It doesn't have any monetary value. It is only what we give value to, right? It's an emotional attachment. When the government says, things are going down, everybody freaks out and they hold their money. Or when they say, oh, the economy is going really well, everybody's spending their money. So that, do you see how this works? It's current C, yeah? So it's like a flow of energy. So when you're paying your bills, you need to be in just as much joy about paying your bills than you are about receiving money. You want to really have a good energy and relationship with money and love it. And then my other suggestion is I don't look at my numbers or my bank account more than once a week. Like, and it's on a Sunday for a couple hours. And it's like I just kind of give it a little bit of energy and a little bit of love, and I pay my bills and I get myself organized. I look at my budget, and that for me is really serving, because then I'm able to put my energy into receiving more money.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we've got the stories. We need to unpack our own personal stories. Then we need to have a chat with, if we've got a significant other, have a chat with our partner about what are their stories, because we've probably never had that conversation or asked those questions. I suppose even examine the world our parents grew up in, because it's a very different world to what we grew up in, even since the 80s. Look at the technology. I mean, who knew there would be social media managers, in the 70s, or, you know, AI writing blog articles for us on any topic we give it. It's a whole different planet now. The other thing that I think is really important to pass on, because it's never been done for us, is to talk to our children about money.
Oh,
So what would
love that.
you recommend that parents who, they may not be terribly financially literate themselves, how can they pass on good stories and ideas to start building this financial resilience in their children? What are some good tips for that, Asha?
Oh my gosh, love that. Thank you for asking. I have a 12-year-old son. It's just he and I, and he works for me 1 hour a day, helping me do podcast reach outs.
Beautiful.
Believe it or not, he helps me to get onto podcasts and to blabber. And so we do that, and he receives pay into his own bank account. The other thing that I do as a mother, and that I really, really, really honor, is we never talk about the word. We never say the words "I'm broke," "we don't have any money." It is very much an abundant mindset in my family, because children's brains, up until they're about 18 years old, are extremely formative. So you have the power to change the money story. When you start going, oh my God, we can't afford it, or no, not now, there's not enough money, it's a story that, trust me, it is difficult to let this go. Again, especially as women, we hold these stories really, really closely to our worth. We tie the money to the value of ourself. And so what you want to do is keep that separate. In order to do that, really getting your children involved with the understanding of emotional intelligence and letting them feel their emotions, but also just allowing them to, even sometimes I'll just say, like, what kind of money do you want to make when you get older? Or what do you want to do? What does it feel like when you have $1 million in your bank account? How do you feel? And you want them really feeling that energy of, like, wow, that feels good. I want that. And so then you've got to be that now, and like letting them know that that everything's okay. And again, this isn't rose-colored glasses. This is the understanding of trauma, and how when we say those stories, it affects them, because family patterns simply repeat until someone breaks the cycle.
So for someone who's sitting there listening to this going, "Oh, look, all this woo-woo BS, I'm living week to week. I'm hardly paying my bills. I'm not just gonna sit here and think happy thoughts and my situation's going to change."
Yeah, and
Do you
that's
have a
some of them.
special message to people who are really stuck right now? What can they do to, I suppose, get that first step for them?
Awesome. Well, I have something I can share with your audience. It's called Scarcity Codes activation, and they can do that for 21 days. It's a full blown energy activation. It's a little bit crazy sound wise for an average person, but if you listen to it for 21 days, I have clients that get $5,000 checks. They start to lose weight. They just start to feel better, because I'm releasing the codes in your body. If you're making more than $30,000 to $50,000 a month, you wouldn't want to listen to it, because that's where I am, right? So I can't teach on making $1 million a month, because I've not done that. People do that all the time. They write books on how to be a millionaire, but they don't actually know how to be a millionaire. They just make the money off the book. So you want to make sure that when you're listening to people who talk about making money, you're listening to people who have actually made money. Warren Buffett, huge. Start listening to people and being around people who are millionaires and 5 billion. We have so much access information. You go onto YouTube and you Google 5 self-made billionaires, and you will start listening to their YouTubes. You take 20 to 30 minutes a day to listen to that. You're the sum of the 5 people that you're around. Look at who you're actually hanging around with and who's gridlocking you into that belief system. That's number one. Number two, so get your mind right, right? And then actually start thinking about the self-worth exercise that I've done and give yourself permission to go there. Clearing your trauma will get you a better job. It will give you more worth if you're in a low-paying job, and more confidence to start asking for a raise if that's where you can see yourself earning more money, or more confidence to take a risk and start your own business, and know that you don't need to be afraid.
Will you share that link with me, Aasha, that I can put in the show notes for everybody?
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to.
Thank you. Well, there you go. Bonus gift, everybody.
Yeah. I have another gift too called, it's free. It's an ebook, and it's called Emotional Intelligence Creates Unicorns: The Fastest Way to Make Money in Your Business. And it talks about how you can use emotional intelligence to really start clearing stories so that you can free up and start taking more money.
Sounds like a plan. 2 bonuses. Woohoo! Thank you so much for sharing, Aasha. Really appreciate it. I know when people hear meet the experts, this is probably not the first thing that pops into their mind. They're probably thinking hedge fund manager. So I'm glad we've had this. It's beautiful, because obviously if we're not working on ourselves, it's very difficult to just all of a sudden start not only making but keeping, what we want.
Absolutely. Yeah, I work with CEOs, executives, 7-figure earners all the time, men and women, hedge fund professionals, owners, and all these people who are very high achievers, and they still have the same emotional problems. You cannot escape emotions, and there's even Jeff Bezos and Amazon. He invests over $1.5 billion in emotional intelligence training for his executive team. That's how important it is. Wow. Coaches and in emotional health, it's like a non-negotiable for high achievers. That's how they get to where they are, resilience. And so start thinking about the other ways that you can support yourself and your family that involve their emotional well-being. And it's not cheesy or lame at all, or even woo-woo. It's really just part of life.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I've had clients who are, the 7-figure earners, double income, no kids, absolutely struggling, drowning in debt. They've got all the toys. And yet, a couple who are school teachers who've been very clever and savvy with their money have, a lovely little portfolio of a couple of properties, $1 million in shares. And you're like, wow, it's that intelligence of not what you make, but how you, invest and use it. So very, very cool.
And that probably with that couple, like the love or the trust they have in one another, we see that a lot too. You can be a high earner and haven't had intimacy in your relationship in literally years or months, and that affects your energetic capacity to hold money. It's all connected. So interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much again for sharing with us, Aasha, and all your bonus little goodies too. I'll make sure they're all in our show notes. So you are a love. Thank you so much for being part of season 3. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you to everybody who listened. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn.
And that was another episode of Financial Secrets Revealed. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you got some nuggets of wisdom out of that guest and enjoyed listening to their story. If you'd like to know more, please reach out to me. My contact details are in the show notes, or hunt down your favourite bookstore to find Financial Secrets Revealed and learn more for yourself. I look forward to hearing from you.